I can't see an argument for some of the shit they did. I think this list is I think they're trolling. Like I don't think they had a good idea of what albums really resonated with the culture as a whole. Late
Oh,
Registration and The Chronic are both too low. Late Registration is arguably one of Kanye's best albums. The Chronic at 40 is one of the one of the best albums of all time, but arguably the best hip hop album from the West Coast. And both of those albums are below Acid Rap at 36, which I liked Acid Rap. It's fine. It's viewed really highly by a lot of people that are in our age group, but it's not one of the best 200 projects of all time. It's
it's
just
not.
not. I'm
It's
sorry. It's
not.
not.
Let me put you on game.
Let's get into some controversy. If we didn't cause enough controversy with our previous topics, let's get into some controversy in the music world. Rolling Stone recently dropped their top 200 hip hop slash rap albums of all time, and the internet is ablaze with all of their picks. Let's get into it though. Let's talk about the list itself. How are you feeling about the list overall? Do you think they did a good job? Was it an honest effort? Do you think that they got their finger on the pulse of what personifies greatness in terms of hip hop albums?
That's a really good question, and I think overall they didn't. But I also am trying to contextualize what they were trying to do with the list. I feel like there's two ways to approach it. You could be a hip hop purist and say that they flub this in a myriad of ways and they have no idea what they're talking about. You know, this is a Rolling Stone, it's a major publication that is just basically trying to, direct the narrative and they don't understand the narrative. But I think that they try to create a list based on the way that hip hop ebbs and flows and the influences and the relative sound of the hip hop landscape and how it's been influenced over time and what type of genre or producer has created a certain type of sound, etc. So, and then you think about like the impact. So, an album that I might love that's in the top 30, somebody else might can't stand. Or vice versa, an album that I can't stand and I can't believe it's placed where it's placed, somebody else might love because of its impact on the youth and how it's kind of viewed for the time that it was in. So, for example, a very, very slight example I'm just touching on, a Yeezus at 17 or an Invasion of Privacy at, 16. It's like, what the f are you thinking? But at the same time, when you think about the direction that hip hop is in now, and you think about the impact of the artist, I can see an argument for some of those projects. So, but I got a lot of questions. How about you?
I can't see an argument for some of the shit they did. I think this list is I think they're trolling. I I don't think you can do some of the things that they did on this list and not be trolling. I fully understand that, we're a sports podcast as well. So we talk about things like the NBA top 75 and how it was kind of wrong to grandfather in certain players and that kind of leaving a lot of new players at the short end of the stick. And I think that when you talk about albums, like you can't just include albums that are from 1999 and before. You have to include recent albums. You have to include albums that are important to people that are, avid hip hop consumers now. But some of these are just really blatantly bad. Like I don't think they had a good idea of what albums really resonated with the culture as a whole.
Mm,
I think there's certain albums that are on here that are new that really don't have the impact. Like they weren't even one of the most impactful albums of that year that it was released.
mm,
So it was just like that doesn't really make sense to me, even though you're trying to include something new. So for me, I looked at it as like when I think about hip hop albums and how you're ranking them, you have to think about how popular it was because I think that hip hop albums kind of operate in that way and popularity is important. So if you think about a guy like Drake, like even though he may not have the critical acclaim, he may not have necessarily, the critics on his side, but he sets records when he releases albums. So you have to include him in the culture. And of course, a lot of people love his music. So, and to some extent, myself included. So you have to include him. So I think about popularity. I think about how is it received critically,
mm,
how the quality of the album itself, according to the people that listen to it and the people that write about it and consume it. And then also the influence. Like, was it, how different was it from everything else that came out at the time? Did it influence the music that came after it? Like, I think all three of those things are important, and I think there's lots of albums on this list that kind of fall short of a couple of those categories as far as being included. So let's look at the bottom 50. So 200 to 150. Um, are there any albums? I guess we could trade off. I'll give my first album that I think they got wrong, whether we can say if it's too low or too high.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say Bandana at 197. I
Okay.
think that's too low. I think if we're going to include current albums, Freddie Gibbs has had one of the most critically acclaimed runs in recent hip hop history. So to put him at 197 below some other artists that will be named later that have released albums recently, I think that if you're going to include him on this list, you probably want to put him a little higher.
Yeah. No, I get that. Also, a point of warning, or not warning, but a disclaimer. I have not listened to a large amount of albums on this list, so I do think
Same,
that my
same. Yeah.
opinion should be taken with a grain of salt.
I'm only
Um,
commenting on albums that I've listened to, by the way.
okay,
I'm only
yeah,
commenting on albums that I've listened to.
and so I think that that's really fair. For me, I was really surprised that they put Astroworld at 200. I think that Astroworld is a really awesome project, both commercially and critically, and has some of the biggest hits that we've seen over the last decade.
Yeah.
And Travis Scott's impact on hip hop as a whole is really big and powerful. So fine, you don't put Rodeo on, but you just basically slap, Travis Scott, Astroworld at 200. I thought that was kind of disrespectful. Any others for you?
Little Sims. Sometimes I might be introvert. I don't think it should be on the list.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
um,
Mm,
I think I can make this argument for Bandana as well.
mhm.
I probably conflicted myself. I'm looking up right now when Bandana came out.
Okay.
Um, okay, yeah, I'm not conflicting myself then. Bandana came out in 2019, so it's been almost 3 years since the album dropped. So you have enough time to contextualize it. Sometimes I might be introvert came out last year.
Mm.
How can you, with good conscience, say it's one of the best 200 hip hop albums of all time if it came out last year? And I think there's some albums on this list that are like that. Like, there's other albums I think that you can include, whether that album is from 2006 or 2016. I think that there's other albums on the list that you can probably include. As great as that album is, as much as I enjoyed it, as much as it was one of my favorites from last year, I'm not putting that. I'm not putting Isaiah Rashad, The House is Burning. I'm not putting any of those albums on this list. And I have a couple issues with some albums on the list like that, but I think it's too soon to put it on there.
Okay, I get your point. I was happy that Lil Sims got representation. It got representation on this list, and that's another part of this list. It's kind of like an award show where you want to, at least a nomination sometimes goes to somebody who might not be the best, but you just want them in the conversation because you appreciate what they do. And I like that Lil Sims got a placement here, and I thought at 180 it wasn't atrocious. Um, but that's kind of my take on it. Album that I think was placed way too high. You got Montero, Lil Nas X at 151.
It's not a rap album.
That's the other thing. I was like, come on, like he's rapping on like 2 or 3 songs here. He got a song with Miley Cyrus on this project. For Christ's sake, like, come on. So I was pretty disappointed that he shot up so far on this list.
It feels
And
like a diversity pick almost.
yeah, right. Yeah, because that doesn't scream hip hop to me. It screams rap and pop, but not hip hop per se.
I have an
Um,
issue with Doja Cat at 136 for the same reason. Just gonna throw that in there so I don't have to spend too much time on it. But yeah, she's
mhm,
not. She raps sometimes, but she doesn't make rap albums.
right. Gotcha. And just a few honorable mentions. I like because your internet at 166 being represented. I like Purple Haze from Cameron at 174 being represented, as well as Blank Face by Schoolboy Q. I'm
Yeah.
glad that they at least made the list, and I think that those are some really solid projects that from artists who have done a good job in creating music over the last decade. So
No, I hear you. I got some more nits to pick though. City Girls is
mm,
at 138. Over Nas, it was written at 140. That's tough. But I got a couple more stragglers.
okay.
Ray Shremmerd at 152. Get
Mm.
the hell out of here. Um, and I'll push a little bit into the 100 to 150, like you said, with Playboy Cardi. Whole lot of red at 129. Most people don't even like that album. Die Lit
Mm.
by most people is considered to be the better or more superior Playboy Cardi project. So you're choosing the wrong album
Mm.
anyway.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what's interesting is the youth aspect of this list, and I feel like old hip hop heads are going to definitely look at some projects from the younger people that are listed here, and they're going to probably shrug and roll their eyes. But I think that there is something to say for them being represented, and hopefully, I'm just hoping that they get some of these picks right because I haven't. I know Ray Shremmer got some hits, but I don't know if it's at the level that they're pushing it. But at the same, when I also think about, yeah, I don't know. This is interesting.
There's better trap albums that have come out over the course of the last few years than the Ray Shremmerd album,
Hmm.
honestly.
Yeah. Nah. Yeah. No, I get you. All right. So I'm glad that you got Nas It Was Written out of the way for me. I think Run the Jewels at 148. That's too low. Um, I they like Run the Jewels 2 specifically.
They
That's
only have
really
one album on here as well, which is
which is crazy. I mean, Run the Jewels 3 is a straight, slapper, and so is RTJ 2. That deserves some higher placement in my eyes. How about you?
looking. Uh, Coloring Book at 105 over Daytona.
Mm. Hmm.
Nah, son. I like Coloring Book. I think it's a fine album. It's not better than Daytona,
You know
in
what?
my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree because I kind of agree. I think that there is something of an argument to put Daytona ahead of Coloring Book, but as
Mm.
I listen to Daytona over and over, as much as I really like that album, it's a great album. I'm not gonna front. I did enjoy Coloring Book, and it has more songs on it, so I'm okay
Okay.
with it being ahead. I think that they got that kind of just right.
I don't think Coloring Book should even be in the top 200.
Oh, spicy.
I think Chance has two appearances in this top 200, and they're both wrong.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with that with his later appearance, and we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. But do you have
Yeah,
any more in the I think that's all for me in the 150 to 100 range.
no, I got a few more. I got honorable mention. I'm just glad that Big Pun Capital Punishment made it on. This is a really
Should have been
underrated
higher.
album. It definitely should have been higher, but at the same time, I'm just glad that people haven't forgot about how great Big Pun was.
You're so nice. You're so not critical of where they put them. Like, watch it. It needs to be higher.
It definitely needs to be higher. I think there's definitely an argument for it to be higher. Um, and then you got the Black Album at 113. Like, come on, son. This was running the radio 03 to 04.
Yeah, it hits the
Um,
popularity for sure. It hits the
like,
popularity mark.
the popularity, the song creation, like, public service announcement, Dirt Off Your Shoulders. Um, oh my, like the Linkin Park collab. This is a top 100 album for sure. So at 113, I thought that was a little disrespectful.
Yeah. Is that it for your 150 to 100?
Yeah, yeah. We touched on everything that I had notes on.
All right, let's descend down from 100 to 50. My first one is going to be Clips. Hell Hath No Fury at 97. It's too low.
Too
They
low?
have yeah, they have Lord Willing at 12, and Hell Hath No Fury is better than Lord Willing to me. So the fact that I think that they're flip-flopped. But yeah,
Mm,
that's my first one. In the 90s, I'm also going to go with Kid Cudi, Man on the Moon at 90. I think that's way too low.
mm,
Um, I think if you look at, I think quality, I think it passes the quality test in terms of critical acclaim. It was well received. Popularity, obviously, whether you want to talk about Pursuit of Happiness or Day and Night, those are two smash hits. And influence, I think, whether you want to talk about Uzi or Trippie Redd or Travis Scott, like a lot of these guys are like, Cudi's children when it comes to the rap game. So I think Man on the Moon is kind of the launching point for it. I think it's a classic album to me. I've said that many times.
mhm.
But I think that in terms of including new albums in the list, I think that it's a bit too low if we're considering what, you know. what we're looking at as far as how they rank their list.
Gotcha. All right. For me, I think another album that is a bit too high, in my opinion, here is Vince Staples' "Summertime '06" at 84. I thought that that was kind of a slap in the face of a bunch of albums that this album is put ahead of. And in the top 100, I like Vince Staples. I think he's amazing as an artist and everything. But top 100, "Summertime '06", it has some hits, but it's not better than the Carter 2, or more impactful than the Carter 2, for example, that was put at 99, or for Daytona, for that matter, or even Hell Hath No Fury. So I think
I
that
disagree
was a
on a
bit.
couple of those. I think so. I
I
think Summertime '06 is great. But I mean that's me. I'm more of a Vince Staples fan, I think, than you are. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah,
where it sits in the top 200 or whatever, or if it should be on there, but it was one that I was happy to see, even if it may be a little bit too high.
yeah. And you know what? Actually, on that note, let me get on my soapbox and say, what the f were they thinking when they put "Get Rich or Die Trying" and "The Life After Death" in this 50 to 100 range? I have no idea what they were thinking in this regard. "Get Rich or Die Trying" was one of the most pivotal albums of that era, of
Yeah.
moving away from, the Jay-Z Bling era and taking it back to the streets, so to speak. And he and 50 Cent ruled New York as well as the charts because of his impact.
The
So to
album was
have
everywhere.
everywhere, had everybody singing. And so to put that at 64, I don't know what they were smoking, to be honest. When it comes to technical ability between production that you get on Aftermath and Dr. Dre, and the whole 50 Cent connection there, and then just the hits, Many Men, 21 Questions, In the Club, like, come on, son. But then also the Notorious B.I.G. "Life After Death" coming in at 59, that's disrespectful there. These albums are easily top 50, if not top 25. And so that, I think that that was pretty egregious. I'm a really big fan of Biggie, and the impact that this album had, and the posthumous debut, the storytelling, the double disc, 25 tracks, a straight masterpiece from start to finish. Yeah, I'm upset about that.
I got two more in the bottom 50 of the top 100. Um, Megan Thee Stallion Fever, that's 75. I think most Megan Thee Stallion fans would tell you that that's not even her best album, that
Mm-hmm.
Tina Snow is, because they included mixtapes on this list, and I don't know why.
I,
There's another very prominent mixtape that is way too high that's on here, but I think this is an example of, if you're going to include mixtapes, which is fine. If you're gonna do that, mixtapes is a huge part of hip hop, so if you're going to include mixtapes, cool. But this is another example of where I think you didn't include their best project as the top one. Migos Culture 54. Um, as influential as that album is, considering how many people have bitten the Migos style in recent memory, I wouldn't complain if I saw it like 80 or below. I think once you're talking 50, top 50, I think it's getting a little, because as influential as many hits as it has, there's some duds on there. It's their best album, but I do think that it might be a little bit high for my taste. I mean, but it's not one that I'm kicking and screaming about, but that's just my little nitpick.
I'll let you have it. I like Migos here. I just think that there's some other projects around it that could be served to be either pushed up. And if by nature of some of those projects getting pushed up, Migos gets pushed down, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anything less left, or can we get into the top 50 and really turn up?
Yeah, now we could get into top 50, and let's have it. So this is going to be real interesting because this top 50,
It's a mess,
this
but whatever you want to
it's a whole mess, bro. It's a whole, like, just like, what are you smoking at this point? Because some of the projects that they put in the top 50 by some of these artists, I think sonically, yeah, I understand where they're coming from in terms of how it's shaping culture, but it's not their best project. So then, like, for example, you got the Chronic that came in at what, I think 40.
41, 40, 40.
And then you got um the Chronic 2001 coming in way ahead, and
Even though the Chronic is better.
even though the Chronic is way better, like I don't understand that line of thinking. You got Good Kid, Mad City coming in at 30, what, 39, 38. even though To Pimp a Butterfly made it into the top five, even though Good Kid, Mad City is a better project in my eyes than
That's
a Good
debatable.
Kid, Mad.
That's a tough one. That's a
That is
debatable.
that is a tough one. But like, damn it, man! Like, come on, like, and they had a run here between Late Registration, The Chronic, The Carter Three, and Good Kid, Mad City, where you put Lil Wayne's mixtape ahead of The Carter Three. But The Carter Three, this was one of the most influential projects that kept hip hop afloat and kept the rap genre just going strong. It kept beats fire. It kept the pop element there, but you just had the rhyming of Lil Wayne just satisfying everybody's needs for bars during this era. And you're just completely slapping him in the face by saying his mixtape was better than this critically and commercially acclaimed album. I really don't get it here. I got more to say, but yeah, let's go. What about you?
I'll move down. I'll do a couple. Tyler, Call Me If You Get Lost
Oh,
at 46. Um, we both really enjoyed that album, but again, it came out last year. So I don't understand how you view it as a top 50 album of all time. If you're going to include a Tyler album, I think Flower Boy is probably a better inclusion at this spot or on the list in general because it came out, I think, in 2017. It's one of his best albums. It marks a shift in his career because he goes on a run with Flower Boy, Igor, and Call Me If You Get Lost. That's one of the better three album hip hop runs in recent memory. So I think that would be a better pick at that spot. But again, it's just too soon. Um, Late Registration and The Chronic are both too low. Um, Late Registration is arguably one of Kanye's best albums. Some people it's their favorite Kanye album, and I can't even really argue. The Chronic at 40 is one of the one of the best albums of all time, but arguably the best hip hop album from the West Coast. And both of those albums are below Acid Rap at 36, which I liked Acid Rap. It's fine. It's viewed really highly by a lot of people that are in our age group, but it's not one of the best 200 projects of all time. It's
it's
just
not.
not. I'm
It's
sorry, it's
not.
not. Like,
Yeah.
and then before I get, I'm gonna just finish out like before we get to 30. I'm gonna do all of the albums that are below 30 that I have. Chief Keef, Finally Rich at 32. What we doing? What we doing? Granted, Chief Keef very influential. Like brought drill music to popularity. One of the most influential artists over the last 15 years. He doesn't get his due, but Finally Rich was critically panned when it came out, and I don't understand the revisionist history as it being a good album now.
Yeah.
And Nicki Minaj, Pink Friday at 31. What we doing? That's the album with super bass on it. what are we what are we doing? Like granted,
Yeah.
Nicki Minaj is a very complicated figure. Um she is a good rapper. She's had a very long list of hits, some quality music, but I don't like most of her albums, and I think this is one of her worst ones. So I don't understand it. But yeah, go ahead. You take over. It's stressing me out.
Yeah. Let's get some happiness going. I do think they have a solid run when it comes to some of the the bottom section of the top 30, because you have All Eyes on Me, the infamous Outcast of Aquemini, and Reasonable Doubt. At least they're listed. At least they get presence in this top 30. The order here, I think, is going to be real subjective, but at least those they have made sure to represent those projects efficiently. But then when you think about albums like Yeezus, albums like Invasion of Privacy, as fun as those projects are and can be, and as much as I enjoyed some tracks off of them, you got to make more space.
They're not in the
The
top 20.
They're not in
Not
the
even
top 20,
close.
and the fact that they have the Marshall Mathers LP at 25, it and it's listed, and they have Dirty Sprite 2 listed ahead of it. You got Dirty Sprite 2 listed ahead of Stan and The Real Slim Shady and like you got like I love Future. I think he's real influential. A party in sight that has drugs available that ain't listening in the future. I get it. He is the rave master. He's the trap master, in a lot of ways. But they got too big for their britches here, and I don't understand that. How about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna echo your sentiments on all of that. Cardi B at 16, I think, is the most egregious thing on this whole list. It's way too high. It's ahead of albums like Mad Villainy, which are considered to be one of the best hip hop albums of all time. Uh, Take Care at 11, I understand. I think that that's one of the instances where they actually got the artist's best album and its ranking in terms of like where they like, because you have to have Drake somewhere in the top 20 because of who he is. Even if I disagree, like he's not in my top 50. That's my personal thing, but I understand the placement. Uh Lauren Hill at 10. That's not even a rap album, dog.
Yeah,
He raps like twice on that whole thing. Like it's not a rap album. It's like a neo soul album. So I don't understand that one at all. Um and Stankonia at 2. Stankonia to me is not Outkast's best album.
I was gonna
Aquemini
ask you about that.
Aliens
Yeah,
is. So I think Outkast belongs somewhere in the top 20. For me, they're definitely somewhere in my top 10. But I don't think that Stankonia is the album that I would have used. It has the biggest hits like Miss Jackson, B.O.B., um, uh, So Fresh, So Clean. But I think that's probably why they put it up there because of the hits, but it's not their best work. And I'll close out my argument by just saying that I think that there were some artists that weren't included where they needed to be. J. Cole, I don't think is in the top 100. And if you're talking about artists in the recent memory that deserve acclaim or recognition on the list because of them being popular current artists, him not being in the top 100 is kind of crazy to me.
yeah.
Um, I don't think The Game was on here at all.
Mm.
I don't think the documentary, which is a classic West Coast hip hop album, was on here at all, which is crazy. And then I think the most egregious one for me, the namesake of this podcast, Lupe Fiasco, does not make one appearance. So I think both of his first two albums have an argument for on this list, and neither one is there. So overall, you can close it out after me. I'll leave it. I'll leave it at this because we got to wrap it up. But yeah, I just think that the list was kind of a big troll in a way. I think that they know putting something at a place where it shouldn't be is going to get people like us to talk about it and bring traffic to their website, bring traffic to their list. So they got me, they suckered me in. I got stressed out, my blood pressure high, but that was kind of the intention. So I kind of just think it's a little bit of a troll list. I don't think there's any good way to actually do a top 200 because music is so subjective. But some
Yeah,
of these picks were so egregiously bad that I honestly can't take them seriously. But that's where I sit with it.
yeah. And to be honest, I can't really blame you. I feel like they just decided to appease everybody and choose a project that I personally love so much in Ready to Die at number one. I think that this top 10 made me personally very happy and kind of vindicated my musical taste in large part because of how much I listened to the Low End Theory, 36 Chambers, Ready to Die, The Blueprint. Like, these are
Yeah, no
albums that
problem
I
with any of
really,
those. Yeah.
My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy at six. I think that this top 10 could have gone a bunch of different ways, but I do agree Stankonia, like here at number two, I was a bit baffled at that. I love that they got Missy Elliott here. She's heavily featured throughout this listing, and I
But
think
that's
that
not
they
even her
got
best project. So again,
yeah, yeah. Again, it was a mess. It was definitely a ride looking through this ranking. And just like with the top 500 albums of all time, I wonder if they even contradicted themselves with some of the placements. I want to go back and cross reference to see if they flip flopped on some of the albums or the hip hop albums that they ranked there versus their ranking here, and to see if there's any consistency there. But definitely got us talking, definitely got the gears moving in the head. And I do, it does bring up the conversation of who deserves to be where and what the hell were you thinking when you left this person off of it. So I'm definitely glad that in some ways they're bringing the flowers to a lot of people who might not have thought of. I think that they do a good job of getting groups like De La Soul and Black Star and Eric B and Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, a lot of hit Queen Latifah, Ice T, a lot of Easy E. The list goes on of artists that they represent here that don't get a lot of love or are starting to be
Big Crit got
forgotten
a look.
about. Yeah, Crit was here 2010. I thought that was that was something. But again, like you said, some of our namesakes like Lupe Fiasco wasn't there. The Game wasn't represented. And I think that I have an issue with that ultimate too. But this was fun.
Yeah, for sure. It's always fun to dissect the hip hop list. There are gonna be more lists that we're gonna disagree with, but I think that that's kind of the intention that they go into it with. But Let us know in the comments what you thought about the list. What albums did you think were too high or too low? Are there any albums that we named that you thought were in the right placement, or you disagree with our assessment of it? Let us know in the comments. And that'll do it for this video. Thanks for checking out this segment of the Put You On Game podcast, where we discuss everything from hoops to hi-hats.
Give us your thoughts on the video in the comment section, and you can also find the full podcast in the link in the description below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.